I'd like to now invite Phoebe Bakanas from Denodo. Hi, Phoebe, and Christopher, Chris Walters, I should say. Not, and so they're both in our pre-sales organization. Phoebe started in San Francisco. Well, why don't you tell me about your journey with Denodo briefly, both of you?
Sure. I mean, I started around just under 7 years. Oop. Thank you. I started just under 7 years ago. I started working actually in the Madrid office.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I was in services team at the time. Then I went out to the Palo Alto office where I was for several years. And finally, I've been out here in New York for about 3 years. And when I moved to New York is when I joined sales engineering.
Yeah, isn't it amazing when someone says, I've only been here 7 years? That shows you what kind of depth we have in the company.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. And Chris?
My story isn't as interesting as Phoebe's. I've been
Every story is very interesting. Come on.
In their own unique ways. I've been with Denodo 3.5 years, started in February of 2016. I'm a sales engineer based out of Houston, and that's the extent of my journey. No Madrid, no New York.
Fantastic.
No services.
Yes.
You've been to Acronia.
I have.
Yes. We are a very international company, and we celebrate. Actually, I was in Europe last week, and we were in conversation, and we counted the number of nationalities of Denodo people. We counted 29, and to add to that, Chris is from Jamaica. So
I am.
There you go.
From Jamaica. That is one of the things that attracted me to Denodo.
Not Jamaica, Brooklyn.
not Jamaica,
Jamaica,
Queens,
Jamaica.
the Jamaica.
Okay, Jamaica,
Yes,
Queens. Sorry, I got that wrong. Fantastic. Well, let me ask you guys. You do pre-sales, but you do more than what we call pre-sales. You're also educating the customers about where and how they can get value from what we do. And so describe for me kind of like, maybe I'll start with you, Phoebe. You've got a lot of experience in this. When you first meet a customer, do they have a clear picture of what they want to do, or are you kind of guiding them a little bit into where the possibilities are?
It really depends on the customer.
Okay.
Sometimes they have a really clear idea of what their architecture is and where data virtualization's place is, right?
Okay.
And at that point, we just have to confirm if it's right, maybe expand.
Okay.
Often there's uses for expansion, but help them get them in there. Other times, though, they explain their problems that they're having to us, right? They're in the middle of a migration, or that they did migrate to a data lake, but they need to enrich it with external sources.
Right.
And they ask, I read some stuff on your website, I went to your conference, how can you help? And those are really fun because you start with an architecting.
Right.
Like
so whiteboarding.
And where can it go in? And how do we fit? And then it's a little bit longer of a process, and then you eventually go through it. So
fantastic. What's been your experience?
Yes, my experience is similar. There are some customers who have really thought about this well in advance. They go through the POC template. They've gone through all the possible use cases, and they've identified 4 solid ways in which Denodo can add value to their business. I think that's the exception. Many times you have customers who they've heard about Denodo, they saw in Gartner or what have you, and they want to kick the tires. They want to see how it actually works, but they don't have a clear view of the value that it can bring. So a lot of times when we come in for a POC, it's because there are a few technical leaders within the organization who believe in it, but they need to be able to have something that they can use to sell to their management to get budget. So it's across the board.
Isn't it fun to see customers hit that aha moment? And even if they're blue-eyed, their eyes turned red with the Denodo logos. Exactly.
Definitely.
Okay. Well, I'm going to have a little fun with both of you, and maybe you're not expecting this. I'm gonna. I'm gonna give you the mic to the two of you. Okay. You're going to ask him the toughest pre-sales question a customer ever asked you, and see how Chris does, and then he's going to repay you and see how he's going to ask you the toughest pre-sales question a customer asked him, and see how you answer. There you go.
Can I, instead of a tough question, can I ask a frequently asked question? Okay. Which might be a little easier for you to answer.
You don't have to make it easy for us.
Well, I just think the frequently asked questions also. Okay. Fine. So I have Snowflake. Why do I need Denodo?
So yes, we get those kind of questions all the time.
Yeah.
I have this. Why do I need Denodo? And I think the term data virtualization is actually misunderstood by many people. In the case of Snowflake, it's a data storage, right? It involves storage of data. What Denodo enables is consuming that data that you have stationary there in Snowflake, and you want to add value to it by combining it with Salesforce, with data in your Teradata. So Denodo provides a way of consuming all that data without having to physically move it all to Snowflake. Snowflake is a data warehouse, right? So it's different things.
You cleared that right up for me.
Are we clear now?
So clear, thank you.
What's a question? I had a great question, but it escapes my mind right now, so I'll have Suresh ask you one.
Oh, all right. Okay, Chris.
I don't know if that's being kind.
Well, okay, sure, go for it.
All right. What is the toughest challenge you have had doing a proof of concept? So not a question from a customer, but the toughest challenge you've had to overcome doing a proof of concept to demonstrate value for a customer. That's tough, huh?
Well, there's always challenges. Probably the scope creep, right? On a POC. Isn't to say that we don't want to show you how many ways Denodo can fit into the architecture. We would be happy to keep showing you all that, but you have to scope it at some point. You have to put look, these are your main problems, and we are going to take a sliver of them and show them. And then the other time is at the very beginning, just misunderstanding of what data virtualization is. There's just well, can you do the ETL? And it's we're not an ETL tool. Okay, but what about the load? I'm well, we're not an ETL tool, right? And so it's just an education process at the beginning, and then when they get really excited about it, it's the reeling it in and not letting them test everything.
Scope creep. Yes, I
scope
agree.
Creep.
Well, I still get questions in meeting number 3. Oh, you're not visualization.
Right, exactly.
We are virtualization. But, the scope creep is an important point. We do have educational courses. If people want to know, we have tons of webinars. We have events like this. But when we are in a sales process, it's not just for our benefit, but it's for the customer's benefit, that if you have a well-defined project that you're trying to get funded and show value, then it's very important to stick to that. Then on the background, you can check, all the non-functional performance, scalability, security, etc. But it's important. That's a great point that you talked about.
Yeah, use our resources, use our knowledge base. We have a lot of videos. Go to our YouTube channel.
Correct. Yeah, and when you're in that process, it's better almost to be very, very, very focused. Well, let me ask a question to both of you now. A lot of the conversation, even the topic of this event, talks about modern data architectures for digital analytics or analytics and BI and machine learning and AI and all that. But in real life, we all know that a lot of customers are using it as a data layer to feed what we call digital applications, modern web and cloud applications. And I know, Phoebe, you did something really, really cool for a food service company. This was about a online app with menus and nutritional values, etc. Could you kind of shed some light on how Denodo was being used as a data layer to feed a digital mobile app?
Yeah, so in this case, they were creating a mobile app to help people order their goods and
order food, right?
Order food, and there's a lot more complexity to that than you would originally think. But the idea is they had nutritional information in one spot and pricing in another location, and then they had their menu. Of course. And the menu had so many options. If you clicked, one thing, then you had different condiment options, right? So they needed to, first of all, integrate those disparate sources, and then they needed to first denormalize it because it came from different web services in a very normalized format. So they had to flatten it all out, combine it, and then normalize it in the way that the app was going to understand.
So this became a reusable data service around menu, nutritional value, pricing, availability.
Geographic location came into it as well. Where is this person coming from? Right? What menu is offered at that space.
Right. And so based on that, they were able to accelerate the time to market on the mobile app.
Oh, yes.
Right. Okay. Well, do you have an experience where Denodo was used more in an application context rather than in an analytical context?
I would say yes. So there's an financial services company that serves the military. If you think long enough, you can guess it. So their particular case was they wanted to analyze weblog traffic. So all the thousands of people visit their website every day. They wanted to analyze that, compare it with the list of members that they currently have, and then also the data that they have on the different products and services that they offer. And so this data is stored in three completely different sources, three different places. And so they wanted to be able to combine all of that in a way to give them insight in order to guide target marketing campaigns. And so the value that we provided then was enable them to consume those three vastly different sets of data and then provide value, for their marketing outreach program.
Great.
Yeah.
So as I was saying earlier, almost 40% of the use cases on data virtualization can be more application or operations oriented, and the other 60%, of course, being very analytics oriented. Well, for my last couple questions, I'm going to go more around, your experience with Denodo itself. I know, Phoebe, that you were once featured on one of our HR, recruiting, office spirit videos or photographs or something like that. She's famous, right?
Was?
So at least I've seen some photographs. But let's, we have some, we are a fast growing company. We have a lot of positions that we're recruiting for, et cetera. So tell me a little bit about, your experience, as an employee of Denodo and what it feels like, what is the culture that we have in Denodo, and how it feels like to work in 3 different offices, change 2 or 3 different roles. You've kind of experienced a lot in your last 7 years here.
Yeah. Well, first of all, no matter what office you work in here, Madrid, Palo Alto, New York, the camaraderie of the team is strong, right? We have a lot of smart people working for this company, and they're always available to help. They always make time to help, which is I think pretty special. And even when you're more remote, even Chris is in Texas and I'm in New York, and yet we have a good rapport, I believe. Yeah. so it doesn't have to be within the office, right? Like we have a strong virtual team building. So I would say that's like the number one thing working here. And the other one is that the management, you can go and talk to them, and you can, work through what's going on, which is always another thing. Have a roadmap for your career as well. For your career,
very good. Okay. And any thoughts you want to add to that, Chris?
I second everything Phoebe said. I like the people of Denodo a lot. I mean, it's kind of cliche, but I really do. Generally good people you mentioned from all sorts of different countries, and just good and very smart people. So culturally it's my kind of place. People who work hard, play hard. I mean, we hang out together and have a good time, and we also work hard and help to deliver value. So from a cultural standpoint, I love the company, and if you just look at what Denodo does, the problems that we solve and the solutions that we enable, it's a good company to be at a good time. And so I sing Denodo's praises for that.
Yeah, like Bob Marley said, whatever problems we have, everything's going to be all right.
I would sing, but we're trying to keep customers.
I would have asked you to sing. Fantastic. Okay. Well, let's take the last question back to what the audience wants to, learn from such a conference like this. Give me your final thoughts on, what should be some of the key takeaways. Some of our online audience haven't really being able to mingle and talk to the people. Of course, they've seen all the sessions. So if they had to, take some 1 or 2 key takeaways and take 1 or 2 key actions as a follow-up to, getting all this information, what would you say that is?
I think the key takeaway really is just understanding the value that data provides in enabling all sorts of business innovation today. That's a very key takeaway. And as such, we're accumulating data at a faster pace than in any other time in history. And so in order to be able to process that data efficiently, because it's going to be stored in a variety of places, you need something like Denodo, data virtualization, to be able to access that data in all these different places in order to, drive innovation. So that's the key takeaway. Data is here. As I say, data is the new oil. It's probably even more important than oil nowadays. And so understand the value that it provides and understand the role that Denodo plays in enabling you to access data and extract value from it.
Okay, and if there's one thing they should do after this session, what should they do?
What should they do, Phoebe?
Check out Denodo 8.
Check out
When it
Denodo
comes
8.
out.
When it comes out.
But be prepared.
But right now they have to download Denodo Express.
Yeah, and download Denodo Express.
All right.
Hashtag Denodo Express.
Yeah.
Become a data ninja. I don't
Become
know
a
what-
data ninja, etc. Fantastic.
Oh, hey.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you very much for joining me, and it was fun talking to you.